quiet, tight-knit island of mercy, a place where life is gentle, and everyone knows their neighbors. A horrifying darkness was quietly taking root. This wasn't the work of some shadowy stranger. It came from a man welcomed into a home as a friend. A man who called himself an adopted son. Over nearly a decade, he used a manufactured friendship to build a maze of lies, creating an entire cast of digital ghosts to manipulate, control, and ultimately murder a loving couple. This is the story of how a seemingly harmless it guy became a cold-blooded killer, and how police unraveled a plot so twisted it would go down as one of the most complex cases in their history. He didn't just kill them for their money. He invented a fake doctor to prescribe the poison, a fake support group to encourage them to take it, and then he set up a hidden camera so he could watch them die. This was murder for the ultimate thrill of control. Mercy Island, just off the Essex coast, is a small community of about 7,000 people. It's postcard pretty, famous for its oysters, and feels peacefully cut off from the rest of the world, especially when the high tides swallow the only road to the mainland. It's the kind of place people choose for a safer, quieter life, and that's exactly the life Carol and Stephen Baxter had built there. Carol, 61, was the brains behind a really clever and successful business called Casplash. She designed and sold unique curved bath mats for modern showers, a niche idea that took off and showed just how ingenious she was. Her husband, Stephen, 64, was a director in the company, but also a high-powered global executive at the real estate giant Jones Lang LaSalle. They were a successful, hard-working couple with 2 kids, Ellie and Harry, and they were looking forward to a well-deserved retirement. But like many of us, Carol had health worries. She'd been diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, an autoimmune condition that messes with the thyroid. It's manageable, but it can leave you feeling exhausted and in pain. It was this everyday vulnerability, this health struggle, that a monster used to creep into her life. Around 2014, Luke DeWitt appeared on the scene, a young IT consultant introduced by a mutual friend. He seemed helpful, if a little quirky. He started off helping the Baxters with their company website, but over the next 9 years, he wormed his way into every part of their lives. He became a fixture in their home, always there, the helpful tech guy and friendly confidant who seemed to genuinely care. The Baxters were kind, generous people. After DeWitt's own father passed away, they took him in, treating him like one of their own. But for DeWitt, the Baxters weren't family. They were a project, and the game was just beginning. Luke DeWitt's plan wasn't some sudden act of violence. It was a slow, creeping psychological siege that he carried out for years. He didn't need guns or knives. His weapons were a keyboard, a smartphone, and a chilling talent for manipulation. The entire scheme was built on a network of more than 20 fake online people. These weren't just names. They were fully formed characters with backstories and specific roles in his sick theater of cruelty. The main character was a woman he called Dr. Andrea Bowden from Florida, a supposed expert in Hashimoto's disease. Posing as Dr. Bowden, DeWitt started giving Carol medical advice that went against everything her real doctors were telling her. He fed her anxieties about her health, offering fake hope and cures that were just a way to take over her life. He convinced her to try dangerous, bogus treatments, like a so-called liver cleanse, to make Dr. Bowden feel real. DeWitt created a whole cast of other fake patients who would share their success stories. One of the most convincing was a character named Jenny. DeWitt would not only text Carol as Jenny, but he'd even record voice notes, putting on a female voice to make her seem completely real. In one of those notes, you can hear Jenny saying, "Hi Carol, it's Jenny, Cheryl's sister. Yes, oh so nice to finally speak to you after all these messages we've been doing." And his cruelty didn't stop with Carol. DeWitt also targeted her daughter, Ellie, creating fake friends to draw her into his web. In one particularly twisted move, he invented a persona who tricked Ellie into thinking she had a shot at a singing competition in London. A complete lie, designed just to mess with her dreams. With this tangled web, DeWitt isolated Carol from her real doctors and friends. She started trusting the online doctor more than anyone else. The family became more and more dependent on DeWitt, who made himself the gatekeeper to all this fake support. The physical result of all this was devastating. Carol's health got much worse. The potions DeWitt was mixing for her were making her sick. At one point, she ended up in the hospital, and doctors were baffled to find metal tacks in her stomach. It was DeWitt. He'd been filling capsules with them and feeding them to her. Even as he was slowly torturing her, he kept up the act of the caring friend. He was there for it all, watching, listening, and documenting. Lead investigator Detective Inspector Lydia George later spoke of the heartbreak of finding Carol's video diaries, recorded for Dr. Bowden, where she poured out her suffering, all sent directly to the man causing her pain, for his own twisted pleasure. By early 2023, DeWitt had total control. He was a puppet master, and he was ready for his final act. On Good Friday, April 7th, 2023, Luke DeWitt went to the Baxters' home on Mercy Island. He brought one of his usual health drinks, but this time, he'd laced it with a deadly cocktail. The main ingredient was fentanyl, a synthetic opioid up to 100 times stronger than morphine. He had saved a stockpile of fentanyl patches that had been prescribed to his late father, who died in 2021. For Carol, he also added promethazine, a powerful sedative. He gave them the drinks, and he left. But he didn't just walk away. Doorbell camera footage caught him looking down at his phone as he left their house. He wasn't just checking texts, he was watching them. In a final, twisted show of power, DeWitt had planted a secret camera in the Baxters' home, and he was streaming it live to an app on his phone. Police later found the images on his phone, showing Carol and Stephen sitting in their armchairs in the conservatory as the drugs took over. The trial judge would later call this the ultimate form of control, a macabre step in a meticulously planned murder. They fell asleep in those chairs and never woke up. The drugs simply made them stop breathing. 2 days later, on Easter Sunday, their daughter Ellie showed up. When her parents didn't answer the door, she let herself in and found them. They were exactly where DeWitt had last seen them on his phone screen, lifeless in their armchairs. When the police and paramedics arrived, there was no sign of a struggle, no obvious violence. The scene was eerily peaceful. Carbon monoxide poisoning was ruled out. At first, knowing about Carol's health problems, it looked like it could have been a tragic medical issue, or maybe even a suicide pact. And who was there, playing the role of the shocked and grieving friend? Luke DeWitt. He was treated as a key witness, not a suspect. He was the one who helpfully gathered up all the medications in the house for the paramedics. He seemed concerned, composed, and was the last person to have seen them alive. But the real story was in their blood. The toxicology reports came back and changed everything. Both Carol and Stephen had died from lethal doses of fentanyl. This was no accident. This was murder, and the quiet tragedy on Mercy Island was now a double homicide investigation, one of the most complex the Essex police had ever seen. Once the cause of death was confirmed as fentanyl poisoning, the investigation zeroed in on one man, Luke DeWitt. He was the helpful friend who gave Carol her medicines, and the last one to see the couple alive. As Lydia George and her team started digging, the perfect facade DeWitt had built for a decade began to crack. The first huge red flag was a piece of paper. A new will, supposedly written by the Baxters, appeared out of nowhere. This will was created on a computer the day after DeWitt murdered them, and it was completely different from their official one. The new version made Luke DeWitt a director of their successful company Cosplash, with significant control. To make it look real, He even invented a fake solicitor named Martin Ellison to validate it. But the forgery was sloppy and screamed motive. The real key, however, was in DeWitt's digital world. Investigators began a massive forensic analysis of his phones and devices, and that's where they hit the jackpot. They uncovered the entire network of over 20 fake personas he'd created. They traced every single message from Dr. Andrea Bowden, Jenny, and all the others right back to devices owned and operated by Luke DeWitt. Then they found the most chilling evidence of all: the surveillance app on his phone, with the still images he had taken of Carol and Stephen dying in their armchairs. It was the ultimate proof of his sick need for control. This was never just about money. It was about a sadistic lust for power. A search of DeWitt's home turned up the physical evidence. They found fentanyl patches from the same batch as those at the Baxters' home, the ones prescribed to his dead father. They also found a bag with metal tacks and empty pill casings, finally explaining Carol's mysterious hospitalization. DeWitt hadn't just been messing with her mind. He'd been physically torturing her under the guise of helping. DeWitt was arrested in July 2023 and insisted he was innocent. When police showed him the mountain of digital evidence, he came up with one last desperate lie. He claimed Stephen Baxter was in on the whole thing with him, that they created the fake characters together to try and help Carol. It was a disgusting attempt to blame one of his victims for the abuse of his own wife. But the story fell apart fast. When prosecutors read messages between the fake characters and Stephen, it was obvious he was just as much a victim as Carol. The level of deception in this case is just staggering. It's a terrifying look at how psychological manipulation can be just as deadly as any weapon. If you found this story compelling, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into complex cases. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part of Luke DeWitt's manipulation do you find the most chilling? Luke DeWitt's trial at Chelmsford Crown Court lasted nearly 6 weeks. The prosecution laid out the mountain of evidence: the digital trail, the voice notes, the fake will, the surveillance photos, and the fentanyl patches. They painted a picture of a cold and calculated killer who spent years plotting against the very people who treated him like a son. On the stand, DeWitt was described as intelligent and well-spoken. At first, he stuck to his final lie, trying to claim Stephen Baxter was his partner in crime. He even tried to smear Ellie Baxter's character, but under cross-examination, his composure finally shattered. His last great fiction crumbled into nothing. The most powerful moments came from the Baxters' children. Their victim impact statements revealed the absolute devastation DeWitt had caused. Ellie described the moment she found her parents. "I have never known an emotional pain to physically hurt so much," she told the court. "It was like my insides were on fire. I screamed, and I screamed." Her brother Harry spoke about the futures DeWitt had stolen. "Luke DeWitt took what we all held most sacred and found a way to extract it for himself," he said. "Our life will forever be punctured by the gravity of his actions." On March 20th, 2024, the jury found Luke DeWitt unanimously guilty of 2 counts of murder. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read. 2 days later, the judge delivered the sentence, calling the murders cruel and senseless. He noted the incredible amount of planning and said that while money was a motive, it probably wasn't the main one. "I consider that it is distinctly possible," the judge said, "that what really motivated you was a desire to control others." He recounted how DeWitt exerted the ultimate form of control by murdering the couple. Luke DeWitt was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 37 years. He'll be in his 70s before he's even considered for parole. The Mercy Island murders left a deep scar on a community built on trust. It's a chilling reminder that monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they sit right at your table and pretend to be family. As one detective put it, "Luke DeWitt was one of the most dangerous men I have ever come across." That same detective said he had absolutely no doubt that had he not been caught, he would have gone on to commit further murders. This was never just a story about poison. It was about an unthinkable betrayal. DeWitt weaponized kindness, preyed on vulnerability, and used technology to orchestrate a slow, agonizing takeover of two people's lives. He used the digital tools that are supposed to connect us to isolate and destroy. But in the end, it was that same digital world that left the undeniable trail of evidence that brought him to justice. Justice has been served for Carol, and Stephen Baxter, a truly dangerous man, is off the streets. But for their children and their community, this story is a painful lesson in how easily trust can be broken, and how evil can hide in the most unexpected places. It's a story of love, loss, unimaginable cruelty, and the incredible police work that finally dragged a diabolical plot into the light.